Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first round of the HAPS grant interview process. I'm Dr. Joshua Bowen, and here at Digital Hammurabi, my wife Megan Lewis and I started perhaps the first ever crowd-funded research grant entitled HAPS, Humans Against Poor Scholarship. There's a great deal of poor scholarship here on YouTube, in social media, and in our day-to-day interactions with others. Our goal in establishing this scholarship was twofold. Melina, I'm going to mute you real quick because I think we got some feedback coming in. Yeah, you good. First, we wanted to make it easier for PhD students to do new and exciting research, producing good scholarship. However, that new and exciting research often remains out of reach to normal everyday people. This brings us to our second goal, to make this new scholarship not only available to everyone, but in a way that's understandable. To that end, each of our applicants are asked to give a live interview where they will pitch their proposed research project to you, the audience, who will then vote on the projects that you want to see funded. Now, we have been fundraising since August of 2018. At that time, we hoped to raise $2,000 to fund one PhD student's summer research project. However, viewers have been quite generous, so that to date, we have raised $3,758.31 via Patreon and one-time PayPal donations. Now, as long as our Patreon pledges do not decrease substantially, we will exceed the $4,000 mark by the end of March, and over $6,000 by June. This means that we can securely fund 2 students with a high likelihood of being able to fund a third. This is all down to you, our viewers. Thank you. Now, remember, it's not too late to contribute. All donation information can be seen in the description of this video. All donations made after August 2019 will go toward the fund to fund the HAPS grant of 2020. Anyone who contributes gets a say in how the money is used. After the final interviews have been completed, you will have the opportunity to vote for the scholar whose research you find most appealing. We have a total of 17 applicants, an amazing response. 2 have since removed their applications, leaving us with 15 applicants to interview. All of the interview dates can be found on our website, digitalhammurabi.com/calendar. Interviews will follow this format: 10 minutes for applicants to introduce themselves and pitch their project, 10 minutes for discussion, and 10 minutes for questions from the audience. If you are watching live and you have questions, please put them in the chat and tag @digitalhammurabi to make sure that we see them. In order to make sure all applicants are treated equally, we will be very strict about timings, so please get your questions in early to make sure that we get to them. Today we are interviewing Melina Seabrook, Margherita Carletti, and Michael Michalski. First up is Melina, an anthropology student from Harvard. Second is Margherita, an archaeology student from the Freie Universität in Berlin and the University of Florence. And then finally, Michael, an archaeology student from Durham in the UK. So let's get started. Melina, I'm going to unmute you. At least I'm going to try to. Okay, I think you're unmuted. Can you unmute yourself? Maybe? Oh, wait. Show and broadcast. Haha. Okay, now try unmuting yourself. There we go. Can you hear me? Oh, yep, there you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can't see you though.
Oh, I think it might be loading.
Oh, okay. There's a little gear up in the top of your screen. It's called settings. You probably know this better than I do, but if you click it, it should say like video, audio, and show your camera.
Huh.
Make sure the right one's selected. I mean, it's not the end of the world. We'd like to see you, but
It was working when I was able to see the camera before. Oh, wait, let me see if this is, no.
I don't think it's something on my end. Present to everyone. Nope. Well, huh. Now it looks like it's not doing that. Well, I tell you what, we are going to, we'll just go ahead and leave you on audio for now, and that's okay. And then we'll try to figure it out. If it comes up, we'll.
Okay, I could try closing out really quickly and then just re-clicking it.
Yeah, that sounds good. You want to try that?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot. If she leaves, I'm still here. So you're watching me going, hey, Josh, say something. Yeah, we're 2 minutes before noon, so the timing should work really well. In case you didn't hear the opening, if you have questions for any of the interviewees, please, Megan is in the side chat. I do not have the side chat open. For those of you that know me, if I have the side chat open, it will distract me, and then I will not be able to concentrate on the actual interview. So, so tag at Digital Hammurabi. Megan's going to text them to my phone here, and it looks like she has already texted me. Hangouts isn't switching back and forth. Okay. I don't know how, if somebody knows how to do that, this happens a lot actually. If we click on somebody's window in the Google Hangout, it'll stay on that screen and it won't switch back and forth. If there's a fix to that, please let me know. All right. Show and broadcast. Okay. Hey, Melina. Now we can see you.
Perfect.
So I am going to, for now, until somebody tells me how to do this, there's a way that Google Hangouts automatically switches. Whoever's talking, the camera will go to them. But I have done something where it only stays on one person at a time. So I'm going to manually click. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Back and forth. So whenever you talk, I just have to click on you. So if I forget, please forgive me. But welcome and welcome. You are officially the first HAPS scholarship interviewee. So it's really great to have you.
Thank you.
And it's 12 o'clock, so perfect timing. Why don't you take the next 10 minutes?
Okay.
And if you have questions for me or whatever, that's absolutely fine. But go ahead and take 10 minutes and tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Talk about, maybe where you got your undergrad or, sort of your educational history, what your interests are, and then, really pitch that research project that you want to do. What you want to do with the money if you win the scholarship. So
okay.
I turn it over to you.
All right. Hi, I'm Melina Seabrook. Currently a first year at Harvard University in the PhD program. I am an archaeologist studying questions related to human interaction in the past, which is why I'm in an anthropology program. And in the States, archaeology doesn't really get its own department. So again, part of why I'm in the anthropology, not an archaeology department. I've been interested in ancient Mesopotamia since I was about 11. I took a history class and was super interested in it. And even then I was like, wow, there's a lot to learn about this site, but a lot of it's not as public as Egyptian archaeology per se. And so I've always been kind of wanting to get into it because I think there's a lot more that scholars and the general public can know. I got my undergrad at Stony Brook University. I was also an anthropology major there, focusing in archaeology. I got a wide variety of anthro courses there, so I got to study the Paleolithic, the urban cities that I'm interested in. Got to see some stuff from Africa, and got to go to Kenya and do a field school, which really, solidified my interest in archaeology, but also gave me a lot of respect for the other parts of archaeology that are out there, which sometimes is not as well defined as it could be. So my major focus is in the area of Mesopotamia, or sometimes called the Fertile Crescent. The portion I work in is in the southern part of Iraq, modern day Iraq. And I'm really focused on human-animal relationships and how this dynamic between them changes as people move into these large urban centers called the first cities in the world. The Fertile Crescent is always interesting because, you know, they rely on the rivers because they don't have enough annual rainfall for dry farming. So they're heavily relying on the rivers for their irrigation and for crops, but that also, the crop production also allows for support of animals. Southern Mesopotamia is also interesting because the domesticates, the sheep, goat, cattle, pig, are all thought to be domesticated in or around this area around 7000 BC. So there are a lot of animals, domestic and wild too, for people to interact with here. As an undergrad, I was able to go work in the city of Ur. If anyone's familiar with the reconstructed ziggurat, that is where I was. I was there for 2 seasons in 2015 and 2017 under Elizabeth Stone, Professor Elizabeth Stone at Stony Brook's guidance, and we were working in neighborhoods. So this is really what started my interest in these human-animal relationships, because we were digging in several different parts of the city in different neighborhoods. And as we're digging in these different neighborhoods, my questions really focus on, well, do people in these different neighborhoods have different access to meat? And in that way, it parallels modern cities because, you know, as modern cities condense and people live in these tight neighborhoods, their access to stores and different grocery stores varies from where you live. And so I wanted to see if these kind of patterns actually emerge in the past. So to look at this, I started by looking at the faunal remains from our excavations at Ur. And I worked with Professor Kathy Twist at Stony Brook University, and we looked at the fauna, which is super widespread around the site. So animal bones can provide a lot of information because they're so plentiful. And until very recently in the archaeological scheme of things, people didn't see the value in animal bones. So they tended to find them, throw them out because they didn't think they had value. But they do, because they tell us about human-animal interactions and about the animal economy that was obviously really important for these cities to develop the way they did. So we looked at the fauna from this time period from about 1900 BC to 1700 BC. This is called the Isan-Larsa period, and it's a time where Ur had there was a dynasty that was centered at Ur, had just collapsed. So theoretically, this could be a time of instability for them, which possibly could be reflected in the fauna of these different neighborhoods because their access to meat could have been changed. So we looked at this fauna. We had about over 7,000 fragments of animal bones to look at. So we looked at all those. And so what it comes down to looking for differences is looking in the species difference. Are some people getting more sheep and goat? Some people getting more cattle or pig? So that's the first part. And when we broke it down by the species, people aren't really using different species. So we looked at elements, and again, it's a little hard to look at elements, say people getting meatier portions of animals versus people getting non-meatier portions, and we're still not seeing a lot of difference. So my question is, okay, is it really that people are having all the same animal use across the site, or is there other factors playing into this? And so that's where I am trying to turn to stable isotope use. Stable isotope analysis is a ratio of different elements that preserve in the bones from when they were used and living. So, for example, carbon is preserved in the bones, and by sampling a bone, you can see the ratio of the carbon-3 versus carbon-4, and that can tell you what kind of plants the animal was eating. And similarly for oxygen, you can sample oxygen, I think 8 versus 10, and you can see what type of water they had access to, whether it was a running river or a stagnant lake or pond. And so by looking at these environmental factors, I want to be able to see if there are actually differences in the animals in these different parts of the site. Because it doesn't make sense for a site as vast as Zor. It's about a few kilometers in diameter that everyone get their meat from the same place. So these environmental factors through the stable isotopic analysis can help us see if people in one portion of the site are getting animals that have poor water quality and poor food sources versus animals that have been kept with higher quality food sources and higher quality water. Isotopes are also good because they can show seasonality. And so winter, people typically think that animals have worse food sources and worse water. But if an animal is really well kept, say because it's kept by the temple or palace, which tend to be more wealthy, they could actually have access to fodder, food specifically farmed for plants, and stable water sources because they're being looked after very well. So to see these things, you have to sample the bones, not all of them because that would be a lot of time and money that we don't have. But ideally, I'd like to sample maybe 5 from each area that we worked in, and we worked in 4 different areas across the site. So I would sample these to see if these environmental differences are actually what's distinguishing these neighborhoods from one another in the animal economy. And I have a colleague that I can work with to help me set up this protocol to sample the stable isotopes. And then stable isotopes can be kind of pricey. I have access to labs I can do, but you have to pay for some of the resources. So that's what I would use the money for, to see if these differences are present in the past, as they kind of mirror cities today.
Well, that was perfect. Now, Megan, my wife, has texted me and said, well, we have a lot of questions. Okay, that's good. If I click on the focused presenter again, it should switch back to the moving camera thing. Oh, well, there it is. Here, Melina, try saying something.
Hi again.
Yep, you did it. Oh my goodness. Now I don't have to click back and forth.
Perfect.
I feel like that should be a monumental task, but it feels like one, Melina. So
that's
glad
good.
that I don't have to do it. Thank you, whoever told us how to do that. So, man, that's fascinating. So, how long have you been at Harvard now? What year are you in?
I'm in my first year, so I actually just got here about 6 months ago.
Wow. So, are you from the area, or?
I'm from Washington State originally.
Okay.
But I was just drawn to Stony Brook because it had such a strong anthropology department, and these study abroad opportunities. So
it's very interesting. So by the way, great job. I think you did a great presentation there. I think everybody's really enjoying this. And this sort of discussion part here is sort of free form. I think it's just a good time to sort of showcase maybe a little bit more about who you are. So I don't have anything particular to talk about. But so I just maybe so everybody can get to know you a little bit better. So it's interesting. Professor Stone came to, we were at Hopkins, and she came down to do part of an evaluation. And I would think I was in my second year, maybe the beginning of my third year. And I just figured out what I was going to write my dissertation on. And it dealt with the city of Kish, but it was a textual analysis.
Okay.
And she was sitting in this conference room with me, and she said, "So, what do you think you want to write on?" And I said, there's this very small part of my dissertation that just talks about the archaeology of Kish, which is nothing, right? I mean, it's like, it was so terrible. And so I said, "Oh, well, I want to write on the archaeology of Kish," which really wasn't true. But I was so nervous talking to her that that's the first thing that came out. Like, that's going to be subpart A of chapter 1. And she went, "Oh, well, good luck." I was like, "Goodbye." And it was over. I was a moron. So that's probably how she sees me. That's okay.
No, I don't think so. She's very intimidating, but she's a great archaeologist. I learned a lot from her in the field. So
yeah, well, that's fantastic. That so you actually were able to excavate, or to do work at ore. I mean, that's fantastic.
I was super fortunate.
I mean, I know that probably a lot of people watching don't understand the significance of that. I excavated in 2010. 2010. Yeah, at Umamara in Syria.
Okay.
with Glenn Schwartz, and that, of course, that was the last time they were able to get in there. But it was such a tremendous experience, particularly for an Assyriologist. But to be able to excavate at ore, I mean, yeah, it's just it's an amazing experience. I'm really happy for you. It's really awesome.
Thank you. I mean, some of the background for maybe the viewers, southern Iraq was closed off since about the 80s because of the Iraq-Iran war, the Persian Gulf, then the 2003 invasion. So it's only just recently that people are able to get back and work there. And so I was just super fortunate and lucky to be able to be at Stony Brook when Professor Stone was getting ready to go back, and was able to accompany her.
Yeah, that's fantastic. She did she do survey with Paul Zemansky? Is that?
Yes, they work together. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I tell you what, I feel like we have a number of questions, and I feel like you've presented this very well. So I'm just gonna ask you some of the questions, and if it leads into a different conversation, we got about 15 minutes left. So here we go. Intellectual Iconoclasm asks, when stationed in Mesopotamia, we were told in other parts of the nation, people still fight to the death over water access. Does this happen? And if so, do the historic battles relate to her studies?
That's a good question. In the South right now, the river has been fairly stabilized. So access to water is still a big issue, but I think there's far more local government, for better or worse, control over how that works. But water's always been an issue. And I think it would relate to my project in the way that if people's animals need access to water and people don't have that access, then they might be forced to drink from these really, really deprived, oxygen poor ponds or puddles, essentially. And yeah.
About ancient water.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, I misunderstood his question. He's asking, did people battle over water in ancient times? Yeah. Sorry, I copy that. Oh, sorry. That was Megan. She's behind. Don't look behind the curtain.
No, so they did. I think it varied, because when you get into these later time periods where the city is really pronounced, the irrigation system is really well defined and organized. So it was.
That was a beautiful play on words, by the way. Organized.
Yes,
that's what you were doing. Sorry.
No, so it would less be about people in the city fighting one another, but more an issue between the pastoral nomads who move their animals across the landscape, possibly competing with the people in the city who have the main control over the water.
Yeah. And I mean, and you could talk about this if you wanted to, but you certainly don't need to. But southern Mesopotamia, for those that have worked in this area, part of as actually, Melina, as you talked about, you have that 200 millimeter ISO height that is required for rainfall farming, which you have in the north, right? But below that, it's very, very difficult to do rainfall farming if at all possible. And so so much of in southern Mesopotamia, irrigation was played such a huge role, and it probably played a significant role in the development of technology. And anyway, and so in the South, you end up having not just battles or skirmishes, whatever, over water supplies, but like the Guedana and the Umm-Lagash border conflict. You have these things where resources are very important, and the thing is, you want to make sure that your God is the right one. Your God is the best one, and so he or she can win the day for you. So, well, that's good. All right, excellent. Let's see, what's the next question? Math, magic, pagan. Was there domestic animals, or did they keep pets?
That is a good question. To our knowledge, we do not think they kept pets. It would be interesting to study that more, but at this point, it seems that they had domestic animals. They had the sheep, goat, cattle, pig, and dog, and possibly cat, though that's always a little contentious. But for the most part, the sheep, goat, and cattle were herd animals that they kept for secondary products or labor or meat. And pig are a little different, and pig probably mirrored smaller scale individual households having pig, because they don't really do well in herds and they can eat anything. So they're good kind of trash refuse animals, and they have a high meat turnover. So those might have been kept locally, but again, not really as pets as we see them. And the same with dogs and cats. They were probably more kind of local area dogs that fed off people's trash, but certainly were not in their homes as pets as we would treat them.
I gotcha. One of the things that I don't know if you watch the channel at all, but one of the things that's particularly for somebody that's in academia, well, at least for us anyway, when you do one of these Ask Me Anythings, they really could ask you anything. So it's always okay. Not that you've needed to, obviously, thus far. I need to do it quite a bit where I have to say, I don't know, but I'll go look into that for you.
Yeah, and I would love to look more into the idea of pets in the past. I think it'd be really interesting, but
this excites me so much, being able to do these types of interviews and to, bright young scholars like yourself. Because I hate to say this, but so much of my time in academia solidified this notion that this us and them, the great scholars up in the ivory tower, and the regular people that do all the other things. And what I love about this is that you're a very friendly, intelligent person that can articulate these ideas. And I think that being able to connect you with people like this in this type of forum, and other scholars like you, I just think is such a valuable thing, because it normalizes these types of academic pursuits, and I just think it's fantastic. So sorry, that was my bit of a rant. Sorry to take time away from you there, Melina.
No, I totally agree.
Biblical history skeptics. In terms of domesticated animals, what were the most common domesticated animals kept in the Fertile Crescent? I know you mentioned a few, but maybe just talk about them again.
Yeah, so sheep and goat are by far the most dominant. They are, particularly sheep, when textiles become a huge industry in southern Mesopotamia, sheep almost outnumber any other animal, say like 5 to 1. So sheep are really important, not just for meat, but because they have the wool and you can get a lot of secondary production from them. Then goat follow, because goats they can travel as sheep, and they're a little easier to support because they eat a little more than sheep do. Cattle's not as frequent, but they get used as beast of burden, which is always good when you need to plow agricultural fields. They actually did have donkeys, domesticated donkeys. And those are kind of interesting. not so much at Ur, but you definitely see donkeys buried in actual burials and not just discarded. So donkeys appear to have played a prominent role at some point in Mesopotamia.
Yeah, you see some of that up at Umamara.
Yeah.
It's interesting because my name is Josh. And, when we were digging out there, somebody came over and said, "Hey, Josh, can you come over and do X, Y, and Z?" And of course, you know, the local excavators, you know, diggers, the dig teams were, you know, just local from the town of Umamara, and so they started kind of giggling. And I looked at it, I said to him in Arabic, like, what's so funny? And they said, "Ya Jahash, Ya Jahash." You know, Jahash means donkey.
Yeah.
And, so I didn't know that at the time. I know that now. It spread like wildfire. I got back to the compound, you know, where we would sleep, and the little girls were washing pottery, and they're Josh. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So
they're probably worth nicknames.
All right. Intellectual iconoclasm. We have about 7 minutes left. So Balad Air Base had anti-mortar systems, and it was terrifying at times. Oh, okay. Sorry, this is just a follow-up. Please pass my respects along.
Absolutely.
Tim Smith, are you still able to get into that area and do research in 2019?
Yes, we are. The team at Ur is actually there right now excavating. I unfortunately can't be there. I'm here taking classes, but they're doing great work there. They're continuing in these neighborhoods we worked in, getting more animal bones. So yeah, and there are actually several other excavations going on or that are about to be started in the area. So it's actually growing more accessible, and hopefully it will continue to.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to see more research done in southern Mesopotamia. Of course, that's what I love. So, Donna Noble, how much of the diet was meat?
How much of the diet was meat? I don't know the number off the top of my head. Meat certainly. I mean, cereals, the wheat and barley grown in the fields was certainly a big portion. But I think the meat probably varied, and I would actually like to learn more about how much of the diet it made up, because we see these massive amounts of animal bones. So did these people consume a lot of meat, or is that just a factor of, you know, animals having bones? So that's something to look into.
Excellent. So JB says, can't stay, just wanted to hop in and say good luck to everyone. So there you are. Cretan Captain Idomeneus. Sometimes I feel bad that they're all crammed together and I don't know what the names mean. Maybe not quite relevant, but I wondered for a while when the shears were invented. So they didn't have to pluck the wool off the sheep anymore.
That's a really good question. I don't know when shears were invented. I can imagine that early sheep shears use stone tools, which can be just as sharp, if not sharper, than some of the metals, especially since bronze is the first age we get into, and bronze blunts pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know when the first shears were invented. That is a good question.
Okay, we got about 4 minutes left, so I think we can take one more question. Let's see. Okay. Lieutenant Galloway, is there evidence for non-native animals that were brought through foreign trade? If so, were there differences in their food and care?
Yes, exotic animals. It's another one of my interests. Couldn't really get into it here, but you definitely see evidence for ivory coming in. So they're getting elephant ivory, sometimes hippo ivory, lions, which were in the area in the Pleistocene before 10,000 years, and then seemed to hold out into the Pleistocene or into the Holocene, so maybe to around 5,000 years. But in the Assyrian times, you see these big reliefs where the lion hunting is featured really prominently. So clearly they were getting lions again, because lion hunting was something they really wanted to do. And I would love to learn more about how these animals were kept and treated. However, we find so few of these not just wild but exotic animal remains that it's really hard to say. But if we were to find more, say, elephant, lion, even maybe monkey, which could come in from the Indus, I'd be more than happy to also sample isotopes for that and learn more about how those animals were kept.
I have always, I've little to no scientific background, much to my chagrin, and being able to do just to hear about those types of analyses being done. I've always wanted to take some time and read up on it, but there's, I guess, only so many hours in the day at the moment. But Melina Seaboard, this has been fantastic. I want to say, I know it wasn't maybe your choosing to be the first one to go ever, but I think you did a great job, and this has been a lot of fun. It's been really nice to meet you. And is there anything that you want to say, like maybe one last pitch to say, here's why you should vote for me when the voting comes?
I mean, this study has a lot of parallels to the way people in modern cities live, and I think seeing how people in ancient societies weren't that different from us is always important. So thank you so much for having me and interviewing me. And it's
been absolutely our pleasure. And yeah, look forward to maybe seeing you again. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. And
thank you.
I'll go ahead and say goodbye now. And again, thank you, Melina. I really appreciate you coming on. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Sorry, I have to learn how to do all these things now. So that was great. That was Melina Seaboard. And if you just remember, just while we're waiting for our next applicant, who is, let's see, Margherita Carletti from the Freie Universität in Berlin. And I think there she is there. So let me broadcast. And very good. I think we did it. Yep. Okay. I think we're ready.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. I think your audio might be a little low. Audience, can you guys hear okay? Go ahead, try again.
Hi.
Yeah, I think it'll work. Work. Well, welcome. I don't know if you got to see I don't know if you watched the first interview or not, but if you did, you kind of see the format here. So what we're going to do is I'll give you just 10 minutes or so. I'm realizing here, having done the first one, that we don't need to be so strict about the time, necessarily dividing it up into thirds like that. But go ahead and just take some time and introduce yourself to everyone. Tell them where you've studied and what your research interests are, and then move into your particular project that you want to work on, and talk about what it is and what you'll use the money for, and then why they should vote for you.
Okay, so my name is Margherita Carletti. I'm Italian, and I did my bachelor and my master at the University of Florence. During my master, I did the 2 Erasmus, that are the European project for exchange students in Berlin, and now I come back in Berlin for the 3rd time because I have a contract for work in an archaeology company, let's say, for 3 months, and then in May I will start my PhD at the Freie University, and actually will be a cooperation between the Freie University and the University of Florence. My project will be focused on the urban development the cities in the north part of Levant during the Iron Age. So it means the north part of the Syria during the first millennium before Christ. I choose this topic because my interest is the architecture and the urban development. I already studied a lot this part of the archaeology during my master's, and this geographical area and this period of time is quite interesting because for the first time the community that lived in that part of the Near East were able to express themselves without be under a foreign kingdom. In fact, we have a big crisis around the end of the second millennium before Christ, and then we see after a period without so many archaeological remains or also text fonts, we have a big development of cities that are called or Neolithite or Arameans, but it's still a bit confused understand the difference between those culture, if we can speak about culture. I mean, those names come from just from the system, right, that they use for inscription and textual information. What I would like to do is start from one of the city that is the modern name is Tel Hafiz, and that was excavated by the University of Pisa first and then Florence, and understand how these cities grow up during the end of late Bronze Age and the Iron Age, for create a model and do the comparison with the other cities. We have a lot of cities in that area, pretty well excavated in the old time, and some of them are also just reopened in the 2000 2010, before of course the war started. And then we have also a lot of text information, as I told you before, they're in two different languages. So hieroglyphic, Nubian hieroglyphic for the Neolithite, and Aramaic for the Aramean cities. And also we have some new studies about the iconography that were used especially for the orthostat or the relief that we found in big number in those cities actually. So what I would like to do is a first part of the work will be a deep analysis of the development of Tel Hafiz, and then a regional analysis of all the area. And probably I will use GIS for do it, so we can link and put together all the information that we have from the old excavation, the new excavation, and also the inscriptions, the fonts that we have. I choose Tel Hafiz because, of course, I have the opportunity to work with the original documentation that is not published completely, and because it's one of the quite big cities, and it's we have a stele that come from this stele that now is in Louvre, and it speaks about a city's Hadzek that is identified with the Tel Hafiz, that is also named in the Bible. So it's a sort of, we know from the text that it was a kind of regional site for the Aramean. So will be interesting because we have one of the main cities of that part of the Levant, and why I choose also to do this work in Berlin is because here I have a lot of libraries, well, specialized in the Iron Age. Yes, you are agree. Amazing. And there are also a lot of professors that are specialized in the Iron Age. So if I will win the scholarship, I will use this scholarship for the really beginning of my research thesis. For the moment, I don't have scholarship, so will be really the first contributor to my research, and will be quite important because I have, of course, enrolled at university, and then I have to start to travel a lot between Florence and Berlin. So because I will have to do the first presentation in the program, in the PhD program in Berlin, and contemporaneously start the work in the archive in Florence. So probably I have to travel really a lot between these two cities that are not so far away, but still it's a kind of work that I have to do. So, yeah, more or less, that's it. I was saying, I don't know.
Well, that's excellent, and I think that's a really good introduction to what you're going to do, and it sounds like a very interesting project. So you mentioned GIS, and I don't obviously have a background in the specific aspect of ancient Near Eastern studies, and textual guy, but maybe just for everybody's benefit, I don't know how many people know what GIS is, and how that might work in your project, how it might be used. So maybe if you just talk about like the use of satellite imagery and that sort of thing, to it just in maybe basic terms to talk about how you would use that to do your project.
Yeah. With the GIS, GIS is a program that which you can use for create a thematic map or map in general. So the interesting part of those maps that they are interactive. You can basically build the maps and connected some information to one point or more points. What I would like to do is a map of the northern part of the Levant, so the area that I will study, and then maybe link to each cities all the information that we have. So in the future, if we want to ask to the GIS, for example, to show us where are all the Luvian rites or all the archaeological remains of the Arameans or whatever, we can do it, and we can also see how all those data are connected. Because again, for the inscription, for example, sometimes we have a lot of it's difficult to understand who were Luvian, who were Arameans, because the inscription are also together sometimes in the site. So it will be interesting see how where are the inscription and how in the same site or what we have from the archaeological point of view. And also maybe we can add in the same map the Assyrian stories that we also know from the conquest of the Neo-Assyrian Empire in that area, and that's it. Now I don't know if I explained well, but it's yeah, basically it's a map connected with a sort of database. So when you click a point on the map, you can have all the information that you put it in this point, more or less. Yeah.
So, no, I think that's good. I think that gives. I mean, of course, you're not gonna be able to explain GIS, in 2 minutes. So I think that was good. So you talked about being able to distinguish, between Luvian and the Arameans. Just again for the audience, why is that important to be able to make those kinds of distinctions? Does that help us understand the period better? What's the at the end of the day, how does that help us to be able to make that distinction?
Well, it's important because it's something that we would like to understand better the Arameans, actually. I mean, in my opinion. because the Luvian we already know from the millennium before, so the second millennium before Christ, and also the write was already used during the Empire Kingdom and stuff. But for the Aramean, we know that they were a nomadic population, probably, that were lived in the area since a long time. Like, again, second millennium, we have the first text information that spoke about the Aramean. But then the interesting things is that when they have the opportunity to build their own cities, their own culture, I mean, not their own culture, but to express their culture without to be under a foreign kingdom, then they they give to the Near East a lot of interesting new elements. For example, the language. First of all, the language, because the Aramean we know that in the first millennium before Christ will be to use like a sort of common language between all the Near East, no? So, and it's also one of the first alphabetic write. So it's quite important. Try to know better the situation there. It's also true that in the Near East sometimes it's really difficult to understand if we are speaking about a different culture, if we are speaking about an elite that is controlled as cities. So maybe there is a population that have a culture, a name, a right, and then arrive just a kingdom that conquered that cities and use just another right for in a higher part of the population or in the elite part of the population. Again, speaking about, for example, ethnies, it's quite impossible in Near East. I mean, it was quite more fluid, yeah, situation that comparing to what we are thinking now, what we are able to think today, the modernity, but it's still I think that this is something that we should really take in mind. I mean, when we study this kind of population, and it's something also that is interesting and it's good, no? So don't have standardized population, standardized nationality. So it's interesting also to understand that maybe they were just two cultures that live together in the same place. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm speculating a bit, maybe. I don't know. But yeah.
No, that's good. And I realize that this it can be tough just to answer questions on the fly like that. So I appreciate it. No, I think you're doing very well. So you talked about the interaction. So you're talking about the late Bronze Age. So as you come down into the end of the second millennium, you have this upheaval that takes place. These destruction layers, and of course, you're sort of in that area. A very important part, I think, to understand that. So, there are a lot of people that are here on YouTube, obviously, but that watch our channel as well, that are interested in the biblical texts and ancient Israel, that sort of thing. Is there anything in your research, in this project, or in long-term research project, that would have connections? You mentioned connection with the biblical text. What might that be? Or with ancient Israel, what sorts of things might your research elucidate or illuminate with respect to the Bible or ancient Israel, that sort of thing? Are there any connections there?
The Tel Aviv is identified with Harzrek. That was this capital, the Armenian capital, and some scholars find this name in the Bible with another translation, with another transcription. I think Hadrak could be. Zakaria 9:1, something like that. So if it's true, this identification. I mean, we know that Hazrek is Telafis for this document that we found on the tel. From the moment that I'm not a philologist, I don't know how from the Hazrek they arrived to the name used in the Bible, but I mean, it's still Aramean. And yeah, we know that the Aramean are present in the Bible. So yes, maybe could be there could be a bit of connection with this kind of text, but as I told you before, I'm not a philologist, so I will not use. I will not going. I will not go to inside the translation or the yeah the languages things. I will use the data that the philologists published in the past. This is for sure. But yeah.
Understood. Okay. So maybe we'll get a couple more minutes before the question and answer section, and we do have a couple of questions already, which is fantastic. But maybe you could talk just a little bit about Telafis. Do you think you could give us sort of a mainline basic introduction to Telafis and why it's important during this particular period, just so everybody kind of has a background to the city itself?
So Telafis, it's a tell, and we found in the tell a really long stratigraphy. The older layer that was open was dated by the Chalcolithic period. So we have 4,000 of history in this tell. I will study just the upper part, I would say. The particularity of Telafis is that it's really well preserved. The Iron Age 1, that is the period immediately after the crisis of the end of the second millennium. So the big contribution that did Telafis was to show that the community there doesn't disappear. So the people continues to live in those cities, in those towns, but simply in another way. I mean, it's a completely destroy, for example, the public part of the cities. So we have a sort of squat frequentation of the tell, but still we have archaeological remains. And this is something that show how probably the so-called Dark Age, it wasn't a crisis, a period of crisis like we can think today. I mean, it was just a crisis of the elite, of the. Can you see me? Because I have some problem with the camera. I don't know. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it was probably a period where this new political or these new societies has to organize themselves. So this is one point, and the other one, yeah, also is important Telafas because we have a really spread layers of all the three parts of the Iron Age. So it's well documented the Iron Age 1, the Iron Age 2, and the Iron Age 3. So we can rebuild really a big part of the map of the cities. That is important when we want to study the urbanization and how a cities grow.
Fantastic. Well, excellent. Let me see. So if you do have questions, again, audience, I can't see the side chat. So make sure you tag Megan. She's watching in the other room and texting me the questions. So Donna Noble asks, do you want to analyze only the city or the urban catchment as well?
Well, I'm at the beginning, so the PhD can change a bit during the years, I guess, but for the moment, I take in consideration just the cities and the connection with between the cities. So even for Tel Aviv, for example, we know that there were, for example, a city wall and some door in this city wall. So of course, one of the point of my project is also try to rebuild the street connection inside the city, but also outside. So where the cities was oriented, for example, where it was open, and of course I will do this for the cities and for also the other Aramean or Neolithian in Hittite cities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Biblical History Skeptics asks, what are some typical differences between the Arameans and the Luvians, which help distinguishing between these communities?
Again, from we use this word just for the right. So the Luvian is hieroglyphic, right, and the Aramean is alphabetic. The Luvian cities are somehow somehow they were connected with the empire Hittite. So we know that at the end of the empire Hittite, we have two big kingdoms in the south, Carchemish and Tarkontassa, that were started to do their own kingdom and maintain the tradition of the empire kingdom, the Hittite kingdom. And what we have still in the Iron Age in sites like Malatya or Carchemish is the name of the Hittite family, the royal family that they continues to use. So there is probably a bigger connection between the older empire during the second millennium, and the Aramean looks like more completely new. I mean, it's a nomadic population that start to organize and build in a different way they settlements or they style of life, I would say. But again, it's really difficult understand how if they had really difference in terms of style of life, because I mean it's really complicated. The archaeological remains in terms of pottery, for example, it's quite the same in that area. So we have to study it.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me, and I won't mention the individual's name, but when I was going through my master's program, someone said to me, "Oh, archaeology. You know, anybody can do that. Anybody can go dig around in the dirt and draw some results, draw some conclusions." And I thought, I don't know that you know what archaeology is.
Exactly. No, it's not so easy.
No, it was you know, I think some of the most enlightening experiences I had were out at Amara, and you know, I was out at the edge of the tell at the rampart, and you know, we were excavating down, and I remember getting so excited because you know, I was out there. I was out there kind of by myself. Of course, the dig director, Glenn Schwartz, would come out there very regularly to make sure I wasn't screwing anything up. But you know, I had my 5 members of my Syrian dig team, and so trying to speak Syrian Arabic to them, which was, you know, a challenge in and of itself. But I remember being out there and thinking, oh, obviously we're going to come down on a big cache of tablets. Obviously, we'll find all kinds of gold and silver because this is archaeology, you know.
No,
And I have my whip and my fedora. So I'm just kidding. But I remember maybe the third week there, all we'd found were, you know, little pieces of pottery. And I remember we came down on this tiny little mud, like a clay bull, you know, figurine. And I mean, I was like a little kid. Yay, look what I found. And so excited. And I remember Glenn Schwartz walked over and look what we got, look what we got. And he said, oh, well, we can close up shop. We found what we're looking for. Oh gosh, he was a lot of fun out there. But no, you know, archaeology is extraordinarily difficult. And God bless you for doing it. Because I'm a philologist, you know, and that's what I want to do. Because, man, archaeology is rough. Archaeology is rough. So, well, Margherita, I think this has been fantastic. We've got about 2 minutes left. Maybe you just want to take a minute and sort of sum up and make make your case to the audience. Why is it that you should win the scholarship? What is going to be what's your best reason for being funded to do your project?
Well, I think that the most important things about my project is the fact that it's about a Syrian site. So the last campaign in Tel Aviv was in 2010, and then we had to stop the research on the field. But it's really important today publish this material because probably Syria will be open again in the next, I don't know how many years, but we have the responsibility to have part of this heritage, cultural heritage, and we should study and make public for all the world, because in my opinion the cultural heritage doesn't appertain to one nation, but to all the people that are interested to study and to understand better our past. That's it.
Well, excellent. Well, I think you've done a fantastic job, and I really appreciate you you coming on. And I'm sure that we'll be in contact soon. But I really appreciate you coming on, Margherita, and making a good case.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Ciao.
All right. And we have Michael in the room, and let me see how to show and broadcast. There he is. And I think if you unmute, we should be good. Yep. Is that? Try it again. Yeah. So I think you did it.
Oh yeah, I did it twice.
Yep. There you go.
There you go.
How are you, Michael?
I'm all right. Yourself?
I'm doing okay. Doing okay. So you're at Durham, is that right?
I'm doing my PhD at Durham, but I'm in Edinburgh and Scotland at the moment.
Okay.
My PhD is part-time. So yeah, I live in Edinburgh.
Fantastic. So my in-laws just moved to Skye.
All right.
Yeah, and
it's amazing.
My wife, of course, is from England. She a little place called Aylesbury.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be down south in England.
Yeah. Down there, or it's not.
I love Skye. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. It looks
Star Wars. Yeah, I think Star Wars should.
Yeah. I think you're right.
The first episodes. Yeah, but anyway.
Well, fantastic. Well, I tell you what, we're right on time here. I'm really impressed, honestly, with our ability to do these things in the time frames that we allotted them. So thank you, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for applying. I think this is going to be it's been great so far. So why don't you take maybe the next 10 minutes or so,
sure, yeah.
And just sort of give us background, who you are, and what your research interests are, your educational background, that sort of thing, and then dive into your project and tell the audience why you should get the money.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We'll try to convince everyone that I'm doing the most important thing in the world at the moment.
That's right.
The one trying to convince my wife first. Anyway, so my name is Michalski. Originally, I come from Poland. Can I share screen with you? Is it possible?
I know that is possible. How do I do that? Go ahead, try it one time. See if it works.
I'm gonna try if it works, and then maybe you can switch to my work. Can you see?
I can see it. I'm assuming everybody else can too. So let's try it.
So that's the website. Yeah, you can see down about me. Yeah. Okay. So I like maps, but my journey started many years ago when I graduated in archaeology in Poland and in Arabic culture and language. And I majored in urban archaeology. There's I started my career as a professional archaeologist, commercial archaeologist. So after working a year in Poland, I moved to Scotland 10 years ago. And I've been commercial archaeologist for 5 years, working in Scotland as well as in the Persian Gulf. Just in the middle of my career, I felt that surveying and GIS is a brilliant thing. So I decided to pursue my degree at Edinburgh University, and where I graduated as a geographic information science. Afterwards, I worked for Historic Scotland and for Scottish government. It's a public service job. However, I was always driven by research, by scientific inquiry, and so still working on some projects, on side projects, which occupied my evenings and free time. I decided to bring together all my experience and my education into my PhD. So I started the journey only in January. It's going to be 6 years. It's a long journey, but hopefully it's going to be a very rewarding journey. So I'm studying PhD at Durham University. Having got experience in working in the Persian Gulf, but I always worked on modern and medieval sites. But now I decided to shift my interest into Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, and the Iron Age period. And I'm investigating settlement patterns in the Northern Fertile Crescent, especially the Iron Age transition from Bronze Age to Iron Age. So I started my project, which is called The Great Dispersal. And just to give you a little bit of background, so the history of the Near East, as I'm sure you are aware of, has been characterized by the cycle and growth and collapse. But the trend was always to develop a big socio-political entities, and which result in big empires. And the original empires, are linked with this transition and upheaval time around 1200 before Christ, where sea people appeared in Egypt. There was there was like big migration in the area, and as well as a lot of happened in the landscape, as you can see now. So the tell-dominated landscape changed, and from many small nucleated settlements, you can see the transition into a dispersed settlement pattern. And so that's what I'm interested in. So so the change is attributed to political activities, to the rise of the empires and administrative restructuring, industrial colonization. I don't know. Yeah, you can compare to United States and the first settlers in the West, when they were granted land by the political system, and maybe they dispersed, trying to occupy a new land, going into new areas for them. So created a landscape of power. So something similar was happening at the same time. However, so if you look at the archaeological surveys, you can see the shift and the peak of the density of the settlements at this time. I'm just gonna try now maybe to go back to my, how can I?
Think you got it?
Yeah. No, I don't want to share. I'm back, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah, I'm here, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that we don't know exactly when it happened, exactly where. So you can see the pattern that it started in the northern Mesopotamia and later in the Levant, and this change is attributed in Mesopotamia to the Neo-Assyrian Empire, but in Levant it would be Roman Empire. So all this shift is attributed to the empires as well as of origin of small settlements, hamlets, which are supposed to feed the big cities. Like in terms of Roman Empire, of course, it's going to be Rome. So all the agricultural hinterland was working basically for Babylon, for Rome, and from Ashur, and so providing food. However, we don't know exactly where it appears, whether it was related, or it happened like organically in different parts of the Near East. So I will be using Dharam database. So Dharam has been working in the area for many, many years with great researchers and scholars, and they have a big database of surveys across the whole region. So no, in archaeology you call it big data. Somewhere else you wouldn't call it big data because they're not so big, but I think big data is as well as complex data. So it's a complexity. So I would be using my experience from GIS, trying to analyze these big data sets of settlements, trying to find patterns, and to look, it's to find out whether it's interrelated, whether it's what is underpinning this change, whether we can talking about sociological change, political change, whether ecology, climate change played. So it's quite so. Because the change that happened was so important that it basically created a landscape which is dominating this area up now. However, I would say that if you look at the recent events in the Middle East, maybe it's opposite happening when you have from the big empires, Ottoman Empire was last one, a brief history of national Arabic countries, but now you can see the disintegration. Look at the northern Syria, what's happening. Maybe we are back to so it's fascinating to see the parallels. I mentioned Northern America, but can we compare it to Southern America, to Incas, to because you have small settlements, but you have big infrastructures and roads being built by the empire. So basically, that's what I'm be looking at for the next 6 years. Yeah. That's me.
Okay, excellent. Good timing. Yeah, right at 10 after. So, I guess the thing that when I decided when Megan and I decided the structure, the 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, the second 10 minutes, I really thought I would try to make it so that your research in as much as possible would be palatable, understandable to the people that are watching, because we have a lot of people that are watching that of course are extraordinarily interested in the period, interested in the ancient Near East as a whole, but maybe don't have a lot of background as non-specialists in that. So maybe could you take just a minute or two, or more if you like, and just sort of say the reason that this is so important. I know you talked about as we look at broad historical patterns, we can see certain things tend to repeat. But is there, if you were going to write a popular level book, maybe that's the way to ask us. If you were going to write a popular level book, and you were going to say, I think that my research, when I'm done, what I have found here with this data set is I could write in a popular level book that would be meaningful to the people in this way. How do you think that you would write that popular level book about your research?
I would focus on this landscape of empire. I would write about how the origins of the empire influenced the space, how they occupied the space, how it was different from the previous years, and how it left a footprint which dominates the landscape now we can see. So, of course, history, archaeology, we are all looking at palimpsests, which we want to disintegrate to find out the patterns. So, yeah, the importance is to try to understand the origins, how it changed the space, the landscape, the surrounding, the settlements, the everything, and as well as importance of, as we know, many things originated from the Near East. We are in debt to those people, and at the moment we know a lot about Roman villages, about Roman villas, but I'm sure it didn't originate there by the Roman Empire. It started in the Near East, so we have to draw parallels to Roman Empire because it's well known. It's in our our culture as well, but everything leads back to the Near East, and yeah, it's about the landscape of empire.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to look. It looks like we have a couple of questions. So Nick J asks, what made him find interest in this topic? The topic that you're researching. What I guess he's asking what led you to be interested in this particular topic originally?
So what made me? Yeah, I mean, I think so. I didn't have time to explain. So in terms from the side of methodology, I'm looking at so-called spatial data science. What we can see now in archaeology is, as described by one of Ben Marwick from Washington University, is a data-driven, tool-driven revolution. So I'm first inspired by the ability to analyze now big data sets. We couldn't do it earlier. We have now machine learning, artificial intelligence, and as I mentioned, my original experience, not Near East, it's Islamic archaeology, it's urban archaeology, but being able to analyze big data set and we focus on really important and more puzzling process in the Near East, which is grade dispersal. I just added those two things, and it's amazing topic. I had to do it. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, Megan, my wife, is writing her dissertation on royal inscriptions and inscriptions in general from the third millennium into the early second millennium. And one of the things that she's doing is delving into digital humanities and being able to take these, like you say, these huge data sets, and given that she's using topic modeling to be able to analyze that data. And it's just, when I did my dissertation, which was a philological dissertation, I had an Excel spreadsheet, and I entered all the inscriptions in. There were like 4,000 different inscriptions or something I was dealing with. And I'm sure that had I done that with a little more technological expertise under my belt, I could have entered that data in a way that it would have created a database that would be really useful to be able to do that sort of data mining. And,
Sure, yeah.
Maybe someday I'll return to that. I have to get that expertise first. So
another thing is that what I'm doing is going to be open. The results, and data going to be open, because very often in archaeology we are talking about the interpretation, the final interpretations of a particular researcher or scholar, but now we are interested in data as well. So it means that at the end we want to have similar scientific approach in the science. So fine, you can have many interpretations, but just give me the data which you used to make your assumptions. So everything is gonna be open. You will be able to reproduce my research, and maybe you will come up with new ideas. You will say, no, Ray, I can see something different. You are wrong. That's what's amazing.
I think, and I'll just take a second to talk about this, because the title of the scholarship is HAPS, Humans Against Poor Scholarship. There's been this, sorry, Megan.
Sorry, I'm getting enough.
Oh, okay. Sorry, this is the wonderful thing about broadcasting in your bedroom. Poor guy. I don't know if you guys can hear that. It's Oliver in the background. One of the things that is the great blessing and curse of having this, online resources, is that on the one hand, as you say, somebody can come back and take your methodology, right, and apply it to the data and check it. The problem that, of course, we sometimes run into, and it's really good that, we're all able to have these types of interactions here, is that methodology, right? Data sets you can manipulate. I mean, as you well know, somebody could come and say, I have a different interpretation, but their methodology is flawed. And so I think it's actually really important to not only have this open access data that you're talking about, but having your methodology available so that people can come back and they can say, oh, this is a good methodological approach, right? This is something that's been, when you finish your PhD, of course, you're going to go through this rigorous training and this rigorous scrutiny and this peer-reviewed process. And they're going to say, yeah, your data set is here, but your methodology has been tested, right? And it's been reviewed. And this is a good representation of how someone should come to this data. And I think that's priceless. So no, I'm excited about that sort of stuff. Okay, Richard Wood. Do you know when alchemy became science, when pottery kilns became blast furnaces, and paints taught chemistry to artists?
Right. It's quite difficult to answer. Alchemy words come from Arabic. So, but is it a science? If you can repeat everything.
Yeah, sure. And
it is, but it's a difficult answer.
Feel free to say, I'm not really sure.
No,
I have to do
really.
that all the time. I'll read it one more time. Do you know when alchemy became science, when pottery kilns became blast furnaces, and I don't understand the last part, paints taught chemistry to artists? Maybe painters?
Painters. No idea. Can't answer the question. I'm very sorry.
Understood. Sorry, Richard. Donna Noble, what will Michael do over the summer if he gets the grant?
Yeah, good question. So, spoken to my supervisor, and he's excited that he might start a archaeological survey in Iraq. So I will use this towards funding my survey. Whether it's not there, it might be somewhere there in Near East. The good thing with my project is because it's a regional analysis and it spreads basically across whole Near East, a part of Egypt. I can find many projects that I will happy to join because I'm interested in joining a survey. So I can because I'm using survey data. So I would like to join a survey to get just a practical experience of conducting survey in this area, because you have different methodology, depends on the country and depends on the kind of archaeology you have. So yeah, I will definitely use my money towards fieldwork.
So maybe take a second, because I think that's actually an important thing to talk about. I think when people think about archaeology, they probably first think about Indiana Jones. But after they think about Indiana Jones, they probably think about, being in a square and digging down and then looking, if they've taken an archaeology course or something, and then looking at the stratigraphy, right? And then looking at the what's found in the square and those sorts of things. But you're talking about a different aspect of this, that is site survey. So maybe just for the listeners, maybe summarize briefly what site survey is and what sorts of things it can tell us that, you know, that you can't find out by going up to the, you know, the center of the tell and digging down around the temple.
Okay, so start with excavation. Everyone knows what excavation is. We dig. But to be honest, we destroy everything, yeah, once we dig. We have to, that's why we have to record properly, so it's going to be with the benefit for our children. However, if we can, but however, survey, it's recording, it's a record of wide landscape. It could be by using satellite imagery with a SART, by walking across the landscape and just recording the past relicts. It could be from picking up ceramic pottery from the ground to drawing and surveying, doing the elevation model, digital elevation model using modern survey technology of TEL. And but the idea is that you look at all the sites in connection together and try to find how they relate to each other. And that's why you can understand what's happening in the area in the wider scale, and not only in digging into particular, let's say, house or different aspects of typical excavation.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a perfect way to say that. And, you know, there's always this tension that you see between, you know, trying to specialize, and this is an area of academia, but I mean, trying to specialize in one area or to look more broadly. And I think that the focus of digging down, obviously digging down and, you know, thoroughly excavating a residence or, you know, monumental architecture or something like that is obviously very, very important. But that being said, you know, trying to do broad analysis that incorporates a variety of settlements is also extraordinarily important, and using the tools and the resources that are available to do that, I think is very, very important. So that was a good summary of that. Thank you. Okay, Sam Meyer. I hear GIS used a lot for engineering and survey, etc. What kinds of things can computer tools like that? What kinds of things can computer tools like that help you learn or discover in archaeology?
Yeah, it's correct. GIS is widely used in engineering and many other fields. In terms of archaeology, similar, look for patterns. So, because GIS basically is a model of the world which surrounds you. It's translation of buildings into dots. It depends on the scale, or into polygons, rows into lines. So similar, all the feature, all archaeology, like it's being translated into GIS, into the same model. And then you can use computer power, computer algorithms to try to extract pattern knowledge. You wouldn't be able to do it as a human. So let's say point patterns analysis. So as I mentioned, you do survey, you record your dots, sites, and then you have a map of the sites. You can look at the computer how dense they are and whether they are aligned into a particular shape, north, south, east, west. And you can as well try to relate them to geomorphology, to soil kind, and you can do it the computer very quickly. You wouldn't be able to do it as a human.
Yeah, it's amazing what honestly what the future holds for these sorts of things. And it's, again, I know I keep saying this, but I'm just so excited to be able to. I mean, this stuff is happening, right? But I don't know that the broader population knows that it's happening, and I feel very fortunate that Megan and I kind of get to be the liaison here to sort of bring together all this new research that people like you are doing, and to be able to let everybody know how technology and you know, these types of new methodological approaches are allowing us to get at the past. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I came across the statistics that only in Scotland in the next 10 to 20 years, around 20% of jobs, maybe not jobs, tasks, gonna be superseded by artificial intelligence. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that's what the future awaits us. It's not Terminator yet. I mean, but it's
right.
happening.
Awesome. Well, I think we have time for one more question if you're game. Biblical history skeptics, what would be your top choices of surveys to examine for your research?
Yeah, so ideally, something from the Iraq. I mean, by Iraq, I mean northern Mesopotamia. So today's Kurdistan. And then it could be Lebanon and Jordan. I mean, in terms of Lebanon, of the political situation, a lot of sites being now sites. I mean, a lot of areas going to be probably reopened, more accessible. But yeah, so I could have from the two different parts of the Near East experience to see the difference between different landscapes and sites. So it would be ideal. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Michael, I always want to give you the last word here. So you want to take one more minute and just sort of give one last pitch, you know, why it is that you should be the one to receive the scholarship?
All right. I mean, I should receive the scholarship because of the importance of the research, which is into the most puzzling and enigmatic, ambiguous phenomena in the Near East, which is great dispersal, and because I am using methodology with cutting edge, really methodology, which is open and it is reproducible, which will be accessible to everyone. Everyone will be able to repeat it as well as come up with different interpretations. And I think it makes the research quite important. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you everyone for listening to me.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, round one. Our first three amazing applicants. And I have to say, this sort of thing is good for me because these are areas, of course, that I have general knowledge of, but certainly no expertise. Archaeology or GIS, these are not things that I dealt with at any length. So I'm really excited about it to sort of be stretched here in these interviews. But I hope you all enjoyed that. And Megan is texting me, so okay, good to go. I will close this out by saying this was the first round, so 3. We have 12 more applicants. Then if you want to look at the schedule, digitalhammurabi.com/calendar, you can see when the next interviews will be. And then at the end, if you are a patron, giving to our Patreon or to the one-time donation, Megan's keeping track of all of that. In the end, we will we're still trying to figure that out logistically, but everybody that is donated will get a vote. So if you really saw somebody and you say, man, I want them to get that money because I think they really need it or they deserve it, or I really want to see that research go forward, donate today. And you can do that on Patreon. You can send a one-time PayPal donation, earmark it for HAPS scholarship. But join in making the decision and being part of the movement forward here to get good scholarship from out of the ivory tower and down to normal non-specialists. So thank you all for watching, and until next time, resist poor scholarship. Always ask, how do you know that? Bye, guys.